Around the time when Harshavardhana and Pulakeshin too were locked in a war for supremacy in India, a revolutionary change was taking place not too far away from the Indian shores. It was the emergence of Islam in Arabia, emergence of new kingdoms. During the earliest phase of the medieval history, roughly starting from the 7th century, vassals or chieftains representing numerous clan identities rose in prominence in different parts of the subcontinent. Soon, they acquired power and wealth and asserted their independence to establish independent kingdoms. For instance, Danti Durga defeated the Chalukyas and led the foundation of the Rashtrikuta dynasty. Some chieftains, such as the Gurjara Pratiharas, gave up their traditional occupation and successfully established their kingdom in Rajasthan. A clan of warriors referred to as the Rajputs dominated the history of North and Central India from about 750 CE to 1200 CE. They claimed descent from the solar family or lunar family. Many historians trace their ancestry to tribes such as the Huns, Kushanas, Shakas, etc. They established their kingdoms throughout North India and guarded the land from Arab and Turk invaders. During the reign of Harshavardhana, Kannauj became the central of all political developments in North India. On account of its strategic position, Kannauj fostered trade and commerce, and high fertility of the soil encouraged agricultural growth. Due to this, all new kingdoms that sprang up after the disintegration of Harshavardhana's empire were equally interested in acquiring control over Kannauj. Warring kingdoms involved in tripartite struggle. The beginning of medieval Indian history was marked by a long struggle involving the Gurjara Pratiharas of Malwa, the Rashtrikutas of Deccan, and the Palas of Bengal to establish their supremacy over Kannauj. As this event involved three major regional powers, it is described by historians as the tripartite struggle. The constant struggle eventually weakened the three dynasties and resulted in their ultimate decline. The Gurjara Pratiharas. The Gurjara Pratiharas were the dominant power in western India, that is, parts of western and central Rajasthan and parts of central India. Initially, they had been local officials who later succeeded in establishing independent principalities. They also resisted the Arab incursions. The long line of powerful rulers of this dynasty included Nagabhatta I, 750 to 780 CE, the founder of the dynasty, Vatsaraja, and Mihir Bhoja. Mihir Bhoja, 836 to 890 CE, the most prominent among them, established the largest empire in northern India, with Kannauj as his capital. He issued silver coins bearing the emblem of Varha, an incarnation of Lord Vishnu. He also assumed the title of Adi Varha. Al-Masudi, a foreign traveler, wrote extensively about the power and prestige of the Gurjara Pratihara rulers. They were great patrons of learning and literature. Rajasekhara, the famous Sanskrit poet, was patronized by the Pratihara rulers. The Palas. The Pala Empire was established by Gopala around 750 CE. His kingdom extended over the states of present-day Bengal, Bihar, parts of Odisha and Nepal. They fought many wars with the Gurjara Pratiharas and Rashtrikutas. The Pala dynasty expanded their political boundaries under Dharmapala and his son Devapala. Their empire included Kannauj, Odisha, Bihar, Assam and northern India. According to the Tibetan chronicles, the Pala were patrons of Buddhist learning, literature and education. Dharmapala established the famous Vikramshila Buddhist University. Pala rulers also donated generously to Nalanda University, another famous center of Buddhist learning and education. They had trade and cultural relations with the countries of Southeast Asia. Mahipala, one of the later rulers, was defeated by Rajendra Chola of the Chola Dynasty in 1023 CE. Ramapala, 1082 to 1124 CE, was the last known king of the dynasty. The Turkish invasions eventually dealt the final blow to the Chola Dynasty. The Rashtrikutas. The Rashtrikuta kingdom was established by Dante Durga or Dante Varman. The word Rashtra in Sanskrit means territory, while Kuta means chieftain. Prior to acquiring the status of a ruling dynasty in the Deccan, the Rashtrikutas were the vassals of the Chalukyas in central India. The dynasty produced many famous warriors and efficient administrators. Malkhed or Manyakhed near modern Sholapur in Maharashtra was the capital of the Rashtrikutas. They fought many wars with the Gurjara Pratiharas, the Chalukyas of Vengi, the Pallavas of Kanchi and the Pandyas of Madurai. Gradually, large tracts of Maharashtra, Gujarat and Malwa came to be included in the Rashtrikuta Empire. The Rashtrikuta rule in the Deccan lasted till the end of the 10th century. Govind III 793 to 814 CE, Amogha Varsha 814 to 878 CE, and Krishna III 934 to 963 CE were the most famous among the Rashtrikuta rulers. The rock-cut cave temples at Ellora and Elephanta in modern-day Maharashtra, now two of the UNESCO World Heritage Sites in India, were built by the Rashtrikuta rulers. Other prominent kingdoms. The Chauhans. The Chauhans were the last prominent Indian dynasty of North India. The Chauhan or Chahmana dynasty of Ajmer was established in the 11th century. Before coming to power, they were worshipped of the Gurjara Pratiharas. One of the famous rulers of the Chauhan dynasty was Vigraharaj, who captured Chittor. Prithviraj Chauhan, the most outstanding Chauhan ruler, ascended the throne of Ajmer around 1169 CE. He followed a policy of expansion. His most famous expedition was against the Chandelas of Bundelkhand. The events of Prithviraj's reign have been described in Prithviraj Raso, composed by his court poet and friend Chand Bardai. Prithviraj Chauhan was engaged in the first and second battles of Terrain against Muhammad Ghori in 1191 CE and 1192 CE respectively. In the first battle of Terrain, he defeated Ghori. However, in the second battle, he was defeated and executed. The Churies. Churi is the dynastic name used by two kingdoms in central India and parts of Karnataka. Kings bearing this dynastic name ruled from the 10th to 12th centuries. To differentiate them, historians call them the northern and southern branches of Kalachuri dynasty. The northern Kalachuris ruled over the areas of the present-day western Madhya Pradesh and Rajasthan. They were earlier called Chede or Haihaya. The southern Kalachuris, who ruled over parts of Karnataka, are supposed to be offshoot of Abhira or Rashtrikuta dynasty. The northern Kalachuris, who probably rose to prominence earlier, trace their origin to a royal line that dominated northern Maharashtra, Malwa and western Deccan in the 6th and early 7th centuries. Their capital was Mahismati in the Narmada River Valley. There were three prominent members of this ruling class, including Krishnaraja, Shankaragana and Buddharaja. Subsequently, they shifted their base to Tripuri or Tivar in central India. They expanded significantly in the 11th century and declined in the 12th to 13th centuries. Southern Kalachuris rose to power in the Deccan between 1156 and 1181 CE. At their peak, they ruled parts of the Deccan extending over regions of present-day North Karnataka and parts of Maharashtra. They trace their origins to Krishna, who was the conqueror of Kalinjar and Dhala in Madhya Pradesh. The Jala, a ruler of this dynasty, wrested power from the Chalukya king Taila III and established his authority over Karnataka. He was succeeded by his sons Someshwara and Sangama. Their rule was short and eventful. A new religious sect called the Lingayat or Virashaiva was founded during their rule. Besides, a unique and purely native form of Kannada literature poetry called the Vachanas also came into existence during this time. The writers of Vachanas were called Vachanakaras, poets. Many other important works like Virupaksha, Panditas, Chinna Basava Purana, Dharani Panditas, Bijjalaraya Charite, and Chandrasagara Varni's Bijjalaraya Purana were also written during the reign of the southern Churies. The Chandelas were a powerful dynasty of North India during the early medieval period. They ruled over central India from the 9th century to the 13th century. Their first capital was Khajuraho, the famous temple town. Later, the capital was shifted to Mahotsava Nagar or Mahoba. They are regarded as one of the lunar dynasties. The kingdom of the Chandelas of Khajuraho was a part of the large empire of the Gurjara Pratiharas. The founder of the Chandela dynasty, Nanok, was the ruler of a small kingdom. According to inscriptions, he was the chief of his clan in the first quarter of the 9th century. He was succeeded by his son, Vakapati, a contemporary of the Pratihara ruler Mihir Bhoja. Jai Shakti and Vijay Shakti, the two sons of Vakapati, succeeded him one after the other. Both the princes were strong and valorous and annexed considerable territories to their kingdom. Jai Shakti, the elder brother who ruled first, was also called Jai Jag, and from this name the region ruled by the Chandelas acquired the name of Jajik Bhukti. Rahil and Harshadev, the successors of Vijay Shakti, further consolidated the Chandela kingdom. Yashovarman, the son of Harshadev, was probably the most powerful among the early Chandela kings. He proclaimed himself as an independent king and annexed large areas of the Rashtrikuta kingdom. He also captured Kalinjar. The frontiers of his kingdom extended from the banks of the Yamuna in the north to the borders of Malwa in the south. During his reign, Chandelas became a strong political power in north and central India. He is also credited with having constructed the magnificent Lakshmana temple. Yashovarman was succeeded by a line of other mighty rulers including Dhanga, Gandh and Vidyadhar. During the reign of Dhanga, Kalinjar acquired great importance and was regarded as the second capital of the kingdom after Khajuraho. Dhanga assumed the title of Maharaja Dhiraj Kalinjaradhipati, Lord of Kalinjar. He was also a great patron of art and learning in addition to being a great ruler and a great conqueror. He built two of the more important temples, the Vishwanath and the Parshvanath temples. Paramardi Dev, the last important king of this dynasty, is known in history for his conflict with the Chauhan king Prithviraj Chauhan. The battle between them ended in the defeat of Paramardi Dev. It marked the gradual decline of the Chandela power. In 1202, Kalinjar, along with the territories ruled by the Chandelas, was annexed by the Turkish ruler of Delhi. The outstanding contribution of the Chandelas was to build the famous temples and town of Khajuraho between the mid-10th and mid-11th centuries. The temples provide a rare and striking example of North Indian temple architecture in this era. The Chandelas have left a number of other inscriptions. They are known to have endowed a large number of Jain and Hindu temples. Pattern of administration during the period. The king headed the administration. He was also the commander-in-chief of the army and the supreme judicial authority. Usually, the position of the king was hereditary, although the rules of succession were not rigidly fixed. Titles like Maharaja Dhiraja and Chakravartin spoke of the emperor's power and strength. A council of ministers assisted the king and advised him on affairs of the state. The Mahamantri, Prime Minister, was the head of the Council of Ministers. There were separate ministers in each department such as the Vigrahika, Foreign Minister, Mahapratihara, Guard of the Royal Palace, Rajpurohita, Royal Priest, and the Mahasenapati, Commander of the Army. The kingdoms consisted of areas which were directly administered and those ruled by vassal chiefs or samantas. The vassal chiefs were independent as far as their internal affairs were concerned and had to pay a fixed tribute as well as supply a quota of troops to the overlord. However, the ambition to be independent led to frequent conflicts between the chiefs and the rulers. The directly administered territories were further divided into bhuktis, provinces, and mandalas or visayas, districts. The governor of a province, known as uparikas, collected revenue and maintained law and order with the help of the army. The head of a district was called the Visyapati. The smaller chieftains, known as Bhogapatis, became powerful when the power of the king weakened. Gradually, they merged with the Visyapatis over a period of time. The land was granted to them for a short time in lieu of salaries, and land revenue was collected by the king. The defeated kings were accorded the status of samantas. They ruled under the overlordship of the emperor. They also paid tribute and helped the king with troops, village and town administration. The village served as the basic unit of administration. The headman and accountant of the village, known as the Gramapati, carried out administrative responsibilities. To assist him, there were village committees that looked after local schools, roads, water tanks, temples, etc. Such committees also existed in towns. There were similar committees where the heads of trade guilds were associated with administration. Law and order issues in towns and neighboring areas were looked after by the Kotwal. Military organization. The armed forces had a crucial role to play in the expansion and maintenance of the empire. Apart from a strong infantry and cavalry, a large number of war elephants were also maintained. According to the available literary sources, the Pala rulers maintained the largest number of elephants, while the Gurjara Pratihara dynasty had the finest cavalry in the country. The Rashtrikuta rulers owned a large number of forts garrisoned by special troops. Social life. The caste system was the basis of social life during this period. The Brahmins, priests, and the Rajputs, Kshatriyas, enjoyed the highest status in society, while the Vaishyas, traders and merchants, played a significant role in local administration. There was a decline in the position of women during this period. Sati and child marriage were practiced. Polygamy was also common. Economy. Agriculture was the major occupation of people. Trade relations with China, Southeast Asia, and the Western world flourished during this period. The main items of export were spices, textiles, and precious stones, while the main imports comprised horses, precious metals, and stones. Merchants operated through guilds known as Shrenis. The chiefs of the guilds, called Shresins, held important positions in city administration. The kingdom of the south, the Cholas. The Cholas ruled in South India between 800 and 1200 CE. The founder of the empire was Vijayalaya, who was initially a feudatory of the Pallavas. Vijayalaya built the capital town of Thanjavur, a beautiful city of temples. The glory of the Chola dynasty is, in large measure, attributed to Raja Chola I and Rajendra Chola I. Famous kings. Raja Chola I, 985 to 1014 CE. Raja Chola I initiated the policy of war and conquest by defeating the Cheras and the Pandyas. He invaded Sri Lanka and annexed its northern part to his empire. His kingdom was organized on the lines of efficiency, both economic and military. One of his naval exploits was the conquest of the Maldive Islands. He also annexed the northwestern parts of the Ganga region in Karnataka and overran Vengi. Rajendra Chola I, 1014 to 44 CE. Rajendra Chola I was succeeded by his son Rajendra I, who continued his father's expansionist policies. He defeated the Western Chalukyas and the Pala rulers of Bengal and completed the conquest of Sri Lanka. He marched across Kalinga to Bengal, crossing the Ganga, and defeated the local rulers. To commemorate his victory, Rajendra I assumed the title of Gangaikonda Chola, or the Chola conqueror of Ganga, and built a new capital near the river Kaveri called Gangaikonda Cholapuram, or the city of the Chola conqueror of the Ganga. Rajendra I also defeated the ruler of the Srivijaya Empire, which extended over the Malay Peninsula, Sumatra, Java, and the neighboring islands, and controlled the overseas trade route with China. Srivijaya did not want the Indian merchants to trade with China. The Cholas led an expedition that resulted in the conquest of Kadaram or Kedah and the Malaya Peninsula and Sumatra. Thus, the Chola navy emerged as the strongest in the Bay of Bengal region. Chola Administration. The Cholas had a highly organized administrative structure headed by the king and the council of ministers to aid and advise him. In order to protect the country, the Cholas maintained a large army comprising cavalry, infantry, elephants, and a strong navy. The empire was divided into mandalams or provinces. Each province was further divided into Valanadu or districts and Nadu or groups of villages. A large town was administered separately and called a tanur. At times, princes were appointed as the governors of provinces. Officials were usually paid by granting them assignments of revenue-bearing lands. Village administration. The Cholas had a well-developed system of local self-government. The Ur and the Sabha or Mahasabha were the two assemblies. Inscriptions tell us that the Ur was a general assembly of all classes of people who owned land within the village. In contrast, the Sabha was an assembly found in villages where Brahmins owned all the land as Brahmadya grants. As the Chola rulers granted land to a large number of Brahmins, a number of Brahmin settlements emerged in the Chola Empire. Parantaka's inscription found inside the temple at Uttara Merur describes the functioning of the Sabha. It operated through committees. It had different committees to look after various aspects of local administration, including temples, gardens, irrigations, assessment of land revenue, maintenance of law and order, etc. The Nagaram, as the name suggests, was an assembly found in towns and cities. Its members were mainly traders, merchants, and sometimes artisans. The Nagaram played an important role in urban administration. Economy. The Cholas promoted both inland and overseas trade and commerce. The Coromandel and Malabar coasts served as the centers of India's trade with Southeast Asia. To fix the government's share of land revenue, an elaborate land survey was carried out. Taxes were also collected from tolls on trade, professions, and from the plunder of neighboring territories. Temples. The Chola rulers built many large temples which were the center of cultural life. Besides being spiritual centers, they also served as places for other activities, such as ceremonial dances performed by the Devadasis. The temple was a miniature city or palace with living rooms for priests. The temples usually enjoyed revenue, pre-grants, and donations from the wealthy merchants. The style of temple architecture was known as Dravida, as it was confined to South India. The building of story upon story above the chief deity room, called Grabha Griha, was the main feature of the Dravida style of temple building. Chola inscriptions. Our main sources of information on the Chola dynasty are the inscriptions of the period. The Tamil copper plate inscriptions served not only as title deeds of land grants but also as records of the conquests and events. The copper plate inscriptions are actually long documents engraved or embossed on thin sheets of copper which are then punched and tied together. They record grants of land and bear the royal seal to indicate their authenticity. They also contain details about the land, wells, trees, canals, rivers, pastures, etc., types of taxes and fines and all other rights enjoyed by the grantee. At times, they contain royal genealogies, as well. Inscriptions on stone, pillars and temple walls, such as the ones inside the Brihadeswara temple at Thanjavur, are useful in reconstructing the history of the period. We get to know about local self-government in the Chola Empire primarily from the details provided in the Chola king Prantaka I's Uttaramerur temple inscriptions of 919 CE and 921 CE. These inscriptions describe the village assemblies in great detail. These inscriptions shed light on the socio-economic life of the medieval period. Some of these also showed the royal seal of the dynasty. Marks of masons are sometimes found on these inscriptions. The inscription we read here tells us about the conquests of King Raja of the Chola Dynasty and the gifts made to the temple. The systematic way of giving donations informs us about the organizational capabilities of the ruler. Names of officers like those who collected revenue, managed the temple, aided and advised the king are also mentioned in the inscriptions. Land grants were given to the Brahmins either individually or collectively. Language and literature. The Chola rulers patronized art and literature during the period of their reign. Popular saints called Nayanars and Alvars, who were devotees of Shiva and Vishnu, respectively, flourished in the Tamil region between the 6th and 9th centuries. The age of Kamban is considered the golden age of Tamil literature, and his Ramayana is considered a classic in Tamil literature. Spearheads of Turkish Invasion, Ghaznavi and Ghori. Mahmud of Ghazni, 998 to 1030 CE, also called Mahmud Ghaznavi, was a Turkish conqueror who established his empire in Ghazni, present-day Afghanistan. As part of his expansionist policy, he raided India 17 times between 1001 and 1027 CE at places like Punjab, Mathura, Multan and Thaneshwar. His most daring raids were at Kannauj in 1018 CE and Somnath in 1025 CE. He planned his attacks carefully and did not allow his enemies to combine against him. Ghazni did not wish to rule over India. He plundered India and carried away wealth, artisans and learned men. He was closely associated with the rebirth of Iranian culture. He decorated the palaces, mosques and tombs in Ghazni. Many scholars resided at his court. Among them, Ferdowsi, the author of Shahnama, was the most famous. Mahmud's attacks were devastating in nature as they showed the weakness of the existing kingdoms and paved the way for future invasions. He died in 1030 CE at Ghazni. Muhammad Ghori, Muizzuddin Muhammad bin Sam, also known as Shihabuddin Muhammad Ghori, ascended the throne of Ghazni in 1173 CE. He conquered Multan and Ujjain, route to Delhi and the Gangetic Valley, and made Punjab his base. Around this time, Prithviraj Chauhan ascended the throne of Ajmer, defeated the Chandelas and occupied Delhi. So, two powerful rulers, Prithviraj Chauhan and Muhammad Ghori, both desiring control of the Gangetic Valley and Punjab, came into conflict with each other. They fought the two battles of Tarin in 1191 CE and 1192 CE respectively. The first battle of Tarin resulted in Prithviraj Chauhan's victory. However, in the second battle of Tarin, the superior Turkish military and organizational abilities led to Muhammad Ghori's victory and his control over Delhi, Bihar, Bengal and the Ganga-Yamuna Doab. After the battles of Tarin, Muhammad Ghori returned to Ghazni, leaving the control of his Indian territory in the hands of his trusted slave, Kutubuddin Aibak.